No, not action. I have my sunglasses on.
Okay.
Welcome back to week 3 of our Carpal Theology, as we are going to now jump into a new theme of the whole sermon series, which is that one we referenced last week, the Christ likeness. And it's this long word, and Paul uses it a lot. He uses phrases like maturity in Christ.
Yes.
Spiritual maturity. And this really shines in his letter to the Philippians, which, I mean, is a total love letter in a lot of ways, right?
It is, very much. They certainly seem to be the Christians that he is closest to. Of all the places he traveled, and he traveled so many places, started so many house churches, it seems to be the Philippians that he is personally closest to, because it's a very personal letter written when he thinks he may soon be executed by the authorities. And so he kind of bears his soul and talks to them. And of course he calls them to a Christ-like life. It's a funny thing, because I find that saying to people, well, we should be more Christ-like, is something they often find intimidating.
Yes, 1,000%.
Right? And we shouldn't find it that way. It's just it's a call to actually be people who truly love God and love others every day and in every way. Several times in his letters, Paul says, things like, imitate me as I imitate the Lord.
Yeah.
Because that we are called to be like Jesus in many ways.
And on that point, don't you think it's so much less overwhelming and less intimidating if you can see it done by someone else you know? Right?
Of course,
because then when he
right.
says, he knows that human truth, because he'll say, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Like, here everyone, I know you need something to look at in person. I know you need something to make it tangible and real in this life in Christ phrase that's so hard to sometimes embody and live out if you don't see it done.
Sure, I mean it's how we learn almost everything that matters. I mean, when I'm a late in life, church staff person, and so when I would have questions about what I should do, I would say, well, what would Robert do? Or what would Charles do? Because I could see them in real situations, and I would say, okay, well, I need to imitate them, because they were much more mature Christians and much more mature in the work of ministry and so forth. And so that's what we do. I many times I have classes, I talk about Charles Barkley, and the famous quote of Charles Barkley when he says,
This is the basketball guy?
Yeah.
Just confirming.
That's just for Joaquin, I think. He one time said a long time ago, he says, well, I'm nobody's role model. And it was a silly thing to say, because he doesn't really get to choose. You don't get to choose who's going to imitate you. So we're called to imitate Christ, and we're supposed to be kind. We're supposed to be compassionate. We're supposed to be generous. We're supposed to try to put other people's interests ahead of our own. We're
kind of like the fruit of the spirits, right?
Kind of like
Are those
that.
words? I think between the fruits of the Spirit and the Christ hymn in chapter 2 of Philippians, that anyone looking to know what this Christ-likeness business is would get a really clear glimpse of what Paul is describing, right? Because like that kind of creedal sound of chapter 2 in Philippians, and that phrase you use all the time about became obedient to death, even
death on a cross.
Yep. See, that's how you know someone.
I do use it all the time.
Scott's go-to.
You could really take that opening 11 verses, including the opening paragraph, not just the hymn itself. You gotta have the opening paragraph. You could really start there and build your whole theology of Paul, your whole understanding of Christianity from those few verses, those 11 verses.
When ministers go through the ordination process, there is only one passage in the whole Bible that they require every single ordinand to preach off of, and it is Philippians 2, 1 through 11. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So everyone who goes through ordination has to be able to preach from that, as it is so creedal, so essential. I mean, if we're not going to lift up Philippians 2, 1 through 11, what are we doing?
Wow.
Okay, when you call me a lot of the times, where am I?
Some drive-through somewhere.
That's right.
Whataburger maybe.
I found a
McDonald's,
Dunkin'
maybe.
Donuts. It is morning for all of you who aren't with us. And Scott nor I have had breakfast. Wait, have you?
I have not, and it's got to be showing by now.
Hi, welcome to Dunkin'. How can I help you?
Hi, can I please have 2 croissant, bacon, egg, and cheese breakfast sandwiches? Are you going to get a coffee or no?
1 small coffee.
And 1 small coffee. Is it that simple? You
Hot?
That's simple. I drink it
1
black.
small coffee.
Yeah, do you want that hot or iced?
Hot or iced?
Oh, hot.
Hot.
Who drinks
Okay.
iced coffee? And not
It's
me.
going to be 105 degrees today. That's
I
all.
can't help. On me.
Oh,
On me.
Wow.
Wow.
That is such a treat. This lady has no idea we're filming.
I'm so glad you told me that. That
I know,
all
isn't that-
perspective or
Hi, 1079?
Hi.
all perspective
Ordinance.
ordinands have to preach from Philippians
Would you
2,
like
1 to
your
11. Wow.
Yes, please.
I should point out while we're waiting, here is Lauren's copy of the book on Paul by N.T. Wright.
For the sermon series?
Very good resource. If you want an introduction to Paul that is actually, has some meat to it.
This
Full
is
of
why it was
thoughtful,
chosen.
educated people.
Right?
Timeline in the back.
Very handy.
We don't really know when a lot of how to construct like the correct timeline. So every scholar on Paul has to construct their own, and you have to pick one.
It can be found on page 433. So once you have read the first 432 pages, help yourself.
Or you
to...
can skip right to 433,
Is that
which
what
is
you
what
do?
I do. Yeah,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course.
Okay. Here.
Okay, you want me to get I'll get your sandwich ready for you since you're driving. That's what Patty always does for me. She gets the sandwich all ready.
Wow, this is
So
a luxury
I can-
experience. Wow, that was really quick.
That was
See,
really
doesn't
quick.
that look good?
That does look good.
I know. I go out of my way to go to Dunkin' Donuts
Look at
for
that
these
now.
sandwiches.
Wow.
Well, as you continue having discussions in your small group and with your connection groups at St. Andrew, why don't you think about those few questions of who in your life do you see Christ-likeness in? Who in the church, in the community of faith, do you look to as this maturity of Christ, the journey that Paul describes? And how do you interact with the Christ hymn in Philippians chapter 2? What do you say? Anything else?
They don't have to watch me eat. Good for them.
Enjoy the next 432 pages of your journey.
Okay.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.